What if your paycheck disappeared tomorrow, but the money kept coming? No job, no boss, no schedule, just a direct deposit every month into your bank account. For some, that sounds like freedom. For others, it sounds like chaos. And here's the shocker. This isn't just a thought experiment. With automation, AI, and global competition, millions of jobs are already at risk. From factory lines to office cubicles, work is being reshaped faster than most of us can adapt. That's why UBI, Universal Basic Income, has moved from a fringe theory to a serious global conversation. Stick with me, because at the end I'll share a bonus tip. Not about the dollars and cents of UBI, but about the mindset shift it forces us to consider, and how it could change the way you value your time, even before any government program arrives. But before we dive in, I don't want you to leave empty-handed. I put together a free guide with 5 practical shifts you can make right now to start building stability, even when the future feels unpredictable. You'll find it in the description below. Welcome to Guts to Grace, where courage meets change. I'm Jane, and here we explore what it takes to face uncertainty with guts, and how to find grace in the middle of it. Because guts opens the door, and grace is what helps you walk through it. Universal basic income isn't a brand new idea. Philosophers like Thomas More and Thomas Paine were floating versions of it centuries ago. The basic pitch is simple: a guaranteed amount of money for every citizen, no strings attached. Proponents say this could be the safety net that finally catches everyone, especially in a time when automation, AI, and outsourcing threaten traditional jobs. Real-world example. In 2017, Finland ran a 2-year experiment, giving 2,000 unemployed citizens about $635 a month. The participants reported less stress, more confidence, and a stronger sense of security, even if they didn't all immediately find work. One participant described it as, "The first time in years I could breathe without fear every morning." It didn't turn everyone into entrepreneurs, but it did restore mental health and dignity. Imagine Maria, a single mom juggling 2 part-time jobs. She spends her days working shifts at a grocery store and her nights cleaning offices. With a small guaranteed income, she can finally cut back one of those shifts and spend more time helping her kids with homework. Instead of racing between jobs, she starts cooking dinner again, and her son's grades improve. It's not just about survival. It's about dignity, stability, and the freedom to focus on family. For many, UBI is painted as hope, a way to stabilize lives in a world where steady jobs are no longer guaranteed. But there's another side to this story. Critics argue that UBI is nothing but hype, an expensive dream that could backfire. They ask, who pays for it? If every adult in the US got just $1,000 a month, that's more than $3 trillion a year. Critics say the math just doesn't add up without massive tax hikes or cuts elsewhere. Some argue that governments struggle to manage current budgets, let alone fund an entirely new universal benefit. When Switzerland held a national referendum in 2016 to decide on UBI, nearly 77% of voters rejected it. The overwhelming no was rooted in fears of ballooning costs, inflation, and disincentivizing work. The money doesn't have to come out of thin air. UBI could replace or simplify parts of the existing safety net, things like unemployment benefits, food assistance, or even portions of retirement subsidies. Instead of managing dozens of overlapping programs, a single monthly payment could streamline bureaucracy and reduce administrative costs. In other words, UBI isn't always about adding something brand new. It's about redirecting resources we already spend in scattered ways and putting them directly into people's hands. But reality is rarely black or white, and the growing number of pilot programs shows us something more hopeful. In Stockton, California, 125 residents were given $500 a month for 2 years. The results? Recipients reported better mental health, more full-time work, and greater financial stability. Far from quitting jobs, many used the cushion to find better ones. One participant explained that the payment bought time to think, which was more valuable than the dollars themselves. Alaska has had its own mini version for decades, the Permanent Fund Dividend. Funded by oil revenues, every resident gets a yearly check, often between $1,000 and $2,000. While it hasn't collapsed the labor market, it hasn't solved poverty either. Families treat it as a welcome bonus, not a replacement for work. Think about Daniel, midlife, burned out after years in corporate work. A basic stipend allows him to cut back to part-time and finally launch the woodworking side business he's always dreamed of. The extra breathing room doesn't just give him new income potential, it restores his health and relationships. He starts eating dinner with his family again, instead of sending late-night emails. Across these pilots, one pattern emerges. UBI doesn't automatically erase motivation. In fact, for many, it creates space to make smarter, longer-term choices. Here's the real question. UBI may or may not ever arrive in full force. But the conversation itself is a signal. The old promises of steady work and lifelong careers are already gone. So what does that mean for you? It means thinking about security differently. Picture yourself relying not just on one paycheck, but building a portfolio life. Part savings, part side income, part community support. UBI or no UBI, the mindset shift is the same. Fewer eggs in one basket, more resilience when change hits. Consider a couple in their 50s, David and Lynn. They once relied on David's corporate job alone. When layoffs came, they realized their entire security was pinned to one employer. Instead of panicking, they restructured. Lynn turned her baking hobby into a small catering service, while David picked up consulting contracts. Together, they diversified their income. A UBI check would be helpful, but it isn't the foundation. The foundation is resilience. And this is where the bonus tip comes in. UBI forces us to imagine security not as something given by an employer, but something built from multiple streams. Even if no government ever wires that monthly payment, you can start thinking this way now. By simplifying, diversifying, and claiming more control over your time and energy. So what do you think? Is UBI the future of security, or just another hype cycle? Share your perspective in the comments. I'd love to hear your take. Now that you've explored the debate over UBI, the natural next step is learning how to reinvent your second act. That video is waiting for you on screen. And when you combine it with what you had just learned here, you'll have a stronger foundation for navigating whatever comes next. This is Jane with Guts to Grace. Thanks for spending time with me. I love knowing that we're figuring this out together, step by step. Stay curious, stay steady, and I'll see you on the edge. And in the next video,